5 minutes. That's all it took for 26-year-old Miriam Bult to disappear. She climbed the stairs to a quiet temple on a Thai island and never came back down. One CCTV camera caught everything: the woman going up and the man with flowers who followed her. What happened next was captured in broad daylight, and it ended in horror. This is the true story of a German tourist murdered on Ko Sichang and how a paradise turned deadly in seconds. Thailand. Given its captivating cultural attractions and magnificent landscapes, it's easy to understand why many tourists love returning here year after year. Today, we too return to a familiar tropical paradise. This is a different corner of Thailand, Ko Sichang. It is located in close proximity to the country's capital, Bangkok, but is not as widely known among tourists. While its neighboring islands enjoy popularity with vacationers, Ko Si Chang still relies heavily on the fishing industry, which remains its main source of income. However, don't let first impressions mislead you. That doesn't prevent the island from being a welcoming place for travelers, especially those seeking something more authentically Thai. And in March 2019, one of those who set out for the island in search of its authentic atmosphere was 26-year-old Miriam Beelte. Miriam came from the city of Hildesheim, Germany. She was a very determined young woman who knew what she wanted from life. Her exceptional intellect allowed her to graduate from school with top marks and enroll at the University of Hanover in the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. Given the strength of Germany's automotive industry, specialists with her level of intelligence and education were in high demand. But by mid-2018, her work had been noticed by ISI Company, which offered her a position as a design engineer. While working in Hildesheim, Miriam was able to continue living with her parents while saving money for her own home. ISI collaborated with partners and suppliers from many countries around the world, which meant frequent business trips for Miriam. It so happened that in 2019, the company sent her to visit several suppliers in Southeast Asia. Miriam loved traveling, but a trip isn't as enjoyable if it's only about business. So this time, she decided to combine work with leisure and spend a few extra days in Thailand. She had always heard about its white sandy beaches, ancient temples, and diverse, delicious cuisine. With these thoughts in mind, she set off on her journey, and after finishing all her work commitments, she boarded a plane to the country's capital, Bangkok. Of course, traveling alone can involve certain risks, but Miriam had already visited many countries. She tried to stay cautious and didn't take unnecessary chances. For example, she didn't go out alone in the evenings, kept all her valuables close to her, and was wary of strangers. In other words, Miriam was fully aware that she was a young, attractive woman traveling on her own, but she didn't let that stand in her way. She arrived in Bangkok, where she confidently explored the city and enjoyed the sunshine. Soon, she traveled to the city of Pattaya, located in eastern Thailand, from where she planned to take a short trip to Koh Sichang. On Sunday, April 7, 2019, a ferry brought Miriam to the island of Koh Sichang. Her plan was simple and unpretentious. She wanted to try local seafood, visit several ancient temples scattered across the island, and enjoy the cheerful island atmosphere. After arriving on Ko Si Chang shortly after noon, Miriam rented a moped, which is a very popular means of transportation in Thailand. Having mapped out her route using Google Maps, she set off on her journey. One of the attractions she had chosen was a stone temple located on top of a hill. Although it was somewhat remote, Miriam enjoyed venturing off the beaten path in search of unique experiences. After parking her moped and greeting a flower vendor at the foot of the hill, Miriam began slowly climbing the steps leading up to the temple. A surveillance camera positioned by the staircase captured her arrival. The staircase was the only path up and down the hill. However, the camera never recorded her coming back down. The entire trip up and back should have taken no more than 5 minutes. Even considering that Miriam was walking at a leisurely pace and would likely have stopped to admire the view, she should have returned shortly. Although it was a beautiful temple, there was nothing else on the hill worth staying for. Several hours passed. Miriam's moped remained parked at the foot of the hill, but there was still no sign of her. Since she was traveling alone, no one immediately raised the alarm. Besides, it wasn't unusual for her to stay off social media for several hours. But as evening fell, her family back home began to wonder where she had gone. Soon, the reason for her disappearance would begin to emerge when a tourist from Thailand decided to take a walk along a remote path leading to the temple. Halfway to the temple, he noticed something strange. At first, the tourist didn't realize that it was the mutilated body of a young woman. It lay at the bottom of a shallow ditch, covered with leaves and debris. Horrified by what he saw, he immediately notified the police. It didn't take officers long to confirm that it was Miriam. After examining the body, it became clear that this was not an accident. Although she did have a broken leg, she had died from multiple blows to the face and head with a heavy object. The absence of clothing and other signs indicated that she had been assaulted. However, who was responsible for these actions remained unknown. The police cordoned off the scene and began their investigation. There was only one way to reach the temple on the hill, via the staircase, at the base of which a surveillance camera was installed. The same camera that had recorded Miriam earlier that day. That very camera also showed that after her, only one other person went up. An unknown man parked his moped, exchanged a few words with the flower vendor, and bought a small bunch of marigolds. Then, without hiding or rushing, he headed up the hill. Very soon afterward, he came back down. The flower vendor, who was working at the stall below, thought that the man's clothes looked wet and somewhat faded, although he wasn't entirely sure due to their originally dark color. Still, he decided to ask if everything was all right. In response, the man shrugged and said that he had fallen. At first glance, the incident might have seemed insignificant, but something about it continued to bother the vendor. So he made a mental note of the man's appearance and even remembered the license plate number of his moped. When Miriam's body was discovered a few hours later and the vendor's worst fears were confirmed, he immediately passed all the information on to the police. After running the moped's license plate, the police determined that the unknown man was 24-year-old Ranakorn Romruan. He lived on the island and made a living collecting trash that washed ashore. He was described as a quiet young man who preferred to work alone. Every morning he would go out to sea on his boat, and in the evening he would return home, watch television, and drink beer. Perhaps his life was not very eventful, but Ranakorn had found a way to introduce new sensations into it. The quiet young man harbored a dark secret. He was addicted to illegal substances, had been using them for a long time, and was almost never fully sober. He was arrested the very next day when he went out to sea on his boat. Given the collected evidence and the surveillance footage, he had little choice but to confess. The case was solved remarkably quickly, and within 24 hours of the crime, the details of the young woman's death came to light. That day, Ranakorn woke up early and started his morning with beer and 2 shots of liquor. But that wasn't enough. He wanted something stronger. After taking illegal substances, he got on his moped and began riding around the island. It was a completely aimless trip, until he suddenly noticed an attractive young woman traveling alone, Miriam Bult. He directly approached her and tried to force a sexual relationship, which of course she refused. She continued sightseeing, soon arriving at the foot of the stone temple, unaware that he had not given up. As Miriam climbed the stairs toward the temple, most people would have simply gone about their business. But not Ranakorn, especially not in his state. Noticing a small stall, he bought flowers, believing the girl would be charmed by his gesture. With the flowers in hand, he followed her. As soon as he caught up, he attempted to give them to her and again demanded intimacy. Miriam refused and was terrified. Worse, she realized she was at the top of a hill, alone in the forest, with a stranger making extremely inappropriate demands. She tried to leave, but he followed her. She thought she could descend the stairs quickly, not knowing he was waiting for the perfect moment to attack. Moments later, he saw his opportunity. Ranakorn grabbed Miriam and dragged her into the forest. She screamed, but no one was nearby to help. He assaulted her, forcing her to comply with his vile demands. When he finished, she was traumatized but still attempted to escape. She ran downhill towards safety. However, despite his clouded mind, Ranakorn knew he could not let her escape. She had seen his face. He would be caught. He decided she must disappear. While thinking this through, Miriam managed to get quite far, but weakened and panicked, she stumbled and fell, possibly breaking her leg. Ranakorn caught up, grabbed a stone, and struck her multiple times in the head and face. After killing her, he made minimal effort to hide the body, dragging her among rocks and boulders, throwing her into a ditch, covering her with some leaves, and discarding her underwear about 10 meters away. After the crime, he went home, tried to wash the blood from his clothes, then sat on the couch watching TV and smoking. The next day, he was arrested. The man confessed a few hours after his arrest. Numerous pieces of evidence were found on Miriam, at the crime scene, and in Ranakorn's home, including his blood-stained clothes, leaving no doubt about his guilt. The Thai police conducted a reconstruction of the day's events. Ranakorn showed them 5 locations linked to the crime: where he first met Miriam, where he parked his moped, where he attacked her at the Hilltop Temple, where he assaulted her, and where he left her body. A photograph showed him, head covered with a blue bag, raising a stone over the actress portraying Miriam lying defenseless on the ground. The image is harrowing, reflecting what Miriam experienced in her final moments. Thailand moved quickly to close the case, and the trial took place just 3 months later. With surveillance footage, his confession, and other evidence, there was virtually no doubt about Ranakorn's guilt. He did not apologize, but his mother did on his behalf. She said she had no idea about her son's destructive habits, but demanded the severest punishment, insisting on the death penalty or life imprisonment. The court considered his confession as a mitigating factor for drug use, driving under the influence, and assault. But the murder itself was so horrific that he was sentenced to the maximum penalty. He is now awaiting execution. Thailand is generally a very peaceful country. When locals learned one of their own had been so cruel to a tourist, they were shocked and disheartened. After Miriam Beulte's murder, the residents of Ko Sichang gathered to pay their respects, bringing flowers, praying for her and her family, and hoping they would find comfort soon. Tourism is vital to Thailand, and they worried negative publicity could harm the island's reputation. But nothing compares to the true victim, Miriam. She was young, adventurous, ambitious, and embraced life fully. At the start of a promising career, she still made time for herself and for expanding her horizons. So much life lay ahead of her, but it was cruelly and selfishly taken.